Hey everybody, I'm Mike. This is Budget Guns and Gear Reviews, and you are watching The Right of the People, where we use the first to defend the second every Friday night at 11:30 p.m. Eastern. So uncover your keyboards, fire up your fingers, and come join the conversation. Hey everybody, I'm Mike. This is Budget Guns and Gear Reviews, and you are watching The Right of the People. It is June 5th, 2020 at 11:30 p.m. Eastern. That means it's time to come join the conversation, and conversation it is. One of the things I love about this platform, as I say just about every week, is the fact that it is a two-way exchange of information and ideas. It is not just me sitting here talking to you like it would be on radio or television or a podcast or anything like that. Oh no, oh no, oh no. You have the chance to tell me what you think, and that's the way it should be. Speaking of telling me what they think, let me welcome my esteemed panel. We have the ever honest and absolutely no doubt what he thinks, Roll Call 219. How are you doing today, sir?
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me. I'm excited. It's going to be another good show. And I want to welcome everybody that's going to participate in tonight's little show.
And then we have the one, the only, the irascible, yet lovable Squibload. How are you, sir?
Hey, on the Google side, you had an insurance commercial, and on the Firefox side, you had a belt commercial.
Woohoo! A what commercial? A belt commercial?
A belt.
Hey, man, that's ad revenue. I think it's great. They could advertise whatever they wanted, and I would not care. I am a commercial whore. Make no mistake. Out in the chat, who do we have to say hello to? I really need to get a mouse for this other laptop, doggone it. We got Calaveras 32 Special, G23, Clint Torres. Who else? We have Iron Horseman. Hello from Nevada. I do not recognize the name. Welcome to the show. Hopefully you enjoy what you hear and stick around, and hey, come on back. Let's see. Clint Torres got a White Castle commercial. David Ramirez is out there. Gizzard Gary, Chris Fulmer, Bull Weevil, Rich White, Glenn Tech, Seven Wonders, New York Outcast. And if I haven't said your name, that's because you're not commenting in the chat. Make sure you do comment in the chat so I can give you a shout out and say hello. And you know what? As I said earlier, this is a two-way street. So, give your input. Let's hear your ideas. All I ask is for anybody new to the show is that you keep it PG-13. I try to make this a little bit family-friendly one, as much as I can. Although, every once in a while, I will get a little bit worked up, and I might drop an F-bomb or two, but I really, really try to keep that kind of thing to a minimum. Yeah. Stephen B., hey, what's up, man? Glad to see ya. Vanessa Kitty is out there. Hello, hello. We got a lot to talk about tonight. Yeah. Let me get. Hopefully my sound is okay. I went live earlier to try to make sure that everything was set up for this tonight, because last week's episode was a kind of a wreck because my volume was way down and the panel's volume was way up. So I've adjusted the gain on my mic, and I've adjusted their input, my mic going up, their input going down. So hopefully it's kind of leveled out, and we don't have that disparity like we did last week. Yeah. All right. So what are we talking about tonight? Well, just as we talked about last week, even though that one was delayed, but I'll still call that last week. Hey, David Campbell, how you doing? Stephen B says sound is good. Good. I'm glad to hear it. Anyhow, last week we were talking about the riots. I'm not going to call them protests because there are protests, but that's not what I'm talking about. The peaceful protests, those are a wonderful thing because the event that they're protesting needs protested. The citizens need to rise up and let the government know what they think. I'm all about that. You know, I end every live stream by encouraging you to let the government know what you think. So I'm not going to sit here and say that the protests are a bad thing because they're not, because there is a problem. And, you know, I don't know that it's necessarily a completely race-based thing, although there is a component of that. It's a government overreach thing. And we have those who are supposed to enforce the law believing that they're above it. And we can't have that. And of course, that's not all cops. That is a select few who are the bad actors. And unfortunately, that tars the rest of them with it. Just like any COs, for those of you who don't know, I'm in corrections. Just like there are COs who are bad and they tar the rest of us with that brush. You know, it's like saying that all cops are bad because some cops are bad are like saying all Christians are Klan members because the Klan lights crosses. You know, one does not equal the other. Now, that all that's said, protests are great. It's the violence that I'm disgusted with. It's not necessarily violence in and of itself, because violence can be appropriate under certain circumstances. It is the violence aimed at those who have done nothing to deserve it that I object to. I object to destroying, looting, and utterly wrecking someone's business who had nothing to do with it. You know, as I've said, you want to tear up the police department, you want to throw rocks at City Hall, I don't necessarily condone that type of thing, but I understand it because at least that's what you're angry about. That's, you know, the government and the governmental agency that is responsible for what happened. That's directing your anger at least to there that it makes sense. If a business says, you know what, I'm going to pay the bail for the and contribute to the legal defense fund for the officers who killed George Floyd, then I could see destroying that business. Again, I wouldn't condone it, but I can understand it at least. But some poor guy who owns a shoe store and has absolutely nothing to do with it is getting his inventory completely wiped out. And don't come to me about, oh, it's insured. No, as a matter of fact, a lot of insurance companies have riders in their policies that won't pay for acts of civil unrest. So it's not necessarily that they're going to get their money back. No, they ain't. They might be destroyed, their entire life and livelihood. You know, and then we have the, we're going to move out into the suburbs. The hell with the city. We're coming out to the suburbs to take what's ours. Well, I'm going to tell you, there ain't nothing out here that's yours. Nothing. Not that I live in the suburbs. I live in a small town, but I guess you could equate the two. But there ain't nothing out here that's yours. And at least one law enforcement official agrees with me. First up, we're going to talk about Sheriff Grady Judd from, I think it's Polk County, Florida. This is by Caitlin O'Kane in CBSNews.com from June 3rd, 2020. Florida Sheriff encourages residents to shoot looters if they try to break into homes. A Florida sheriff is gaining national attention for his strong words about using gun violence against potential looters. See, gun violence. Tell me the media isn't biased. How about using guns to protect themselves against potential looters? Maybe that's better. During a press conference on Monday, Polk County Sheriff Judd Grady, it's Grady Judd, praised peaceful protesters. Then he addressed anyone who may threaten criminal conduct during demonstrations. Grady said the department had received information on social media that some folks were threatening to take their criminal conduct into the neighborhoods. I would tell them if you value your life, they probably shouldn't do that in Polk County, Grady said, because the people of Polk County like guns, they have guns, I encourage them to own guns, they're going to be in their homes tonight with their guns loaded. Well, you know what? And then he posted a transcript on Facebook, but you know what? Let the man say it in his own words.
We have received information in social media that some of the criminals were going to take their criminal conduct into the neighborhoods. I would tell them if you value your life, you probably shouldn't do that in Polk County, because the people of Polk County like guns. They have guns. I encourage them to own guns, and they're going to be in their homes tonight with their guns loaded. And if you try to break into their homes to steal, to set fires, I'm highly recommending they blow you back out of the house with their guns.
Absolutely right. And I can't agree anymore. Particularly the fire part. You could wipe out an entire family by setting their house on fire. I don't know. What do you guys think? Did Sheriff Judd go too far? Did he not go far enough? Is he just right? What do you guys think?
Well, I couldn't hear the audio, but when you're talking about rioters going from the city to the suburbs, I mean, I don't know how it is. Well, I was about to say, I don't know how it is other places, but that's not true. I've been to other places. I guess around here, if the rioters are there to loot, they're going to where the stores are. Well, the houses aren't where the stores are. So, I mean, I'm going to be mad if I can't go down to Myers to get me a case of Pacifico because they're burning the place down, you know. And the liquor store around the corner, I'll definitely stand in front of that with my M1 and protect it. But I just don't, around here, I just don't see that happening. I don't see rioters coming into the the people that are doing the rioting in the inner city are only armed because they have guns that they stole, and they definitely don't know how to use them. The people in the suburbs are lawfully armed, and they practice a lot. So, I mean, I don't know. It just doesn't make any sense. They're not going into people's houses stealing stuff. They're going into stores. So I'd be more bummed about the store being shut down. Well, they had to, you know, give it a paint job and a whole bunch of screen doors. But I don't know. I don't go where the riots are. So I don't know.
Well, I saw the Facebook posting from one of the Antifa outlets saying that, you know, screw this. We're done here in the city. Let's go to the White Hood. Let's go to the suburbs and take back what's ours. I don't know what they think is theirs, but yeah. Calaveras 32 Special says, depending on the area, a person's front yard is like their living room, especially in rural areas. Yeah, it's not like that in Ohio. David Campbell says, anybody about to commit a felony, you can defend yourself as long as you try to de-escalate. Well, I can tell you that specifically applicable to you here in Ohio is that you must still meet the requirements for self-defense as far as imminence and belief that you are in danger of severe bodily injury or death. Which murder, rape, and arson have all been, you know, shown to be have been considered in Ohio to be such. Let's see. Let's go out to the chat and see what else I may have missed. A lot of people wishing Grady Judd was their sheriff. Chris Fulmer says there's a curfew within the city of Louisville, Kentucky, from dusk to dawn until June 8th because of the semi-riots here earlier this week. I know yesterday, speaking of riots, a neighboring city, the city I work in, Canton, Ohio, has had protests all week, every day. Actually, for the since last Friday. And they've been peaceful. There have been, maybe a couple arrests, but that's it. They even had, and check this out, this is why. They even had people from Cleveland come down, try to incite the local Canton people into engaging in this nonsense. Canton people told them to shove off, go back to Cleveland. They ain't about that here. So, protesters in Canton, Ohio, hats off to you.
People have time to rally or protest or peaceably gather or riot and loot because of what's going on. They don't have a job to go to.
Yep.
All the events are closed.
Yep.
A lot of the stores are closed. There's nothing going on. If they were all working and had things going on and stuff, I'm not saying there wouldn't have been any sort of protest or rioting, but I think it would have been contained to Minneapolis. Everybody around the country is going, I got nothing better to do. So that's what happens when you shut down the country.
Yep. Hey, David, I forgot to make you a moderator, so boom, you're a moderator now.
What I don't understand is,
thanks for being a patron.
Is all these people, they shut down all this stuff, right? Like what Squib was saying. But yet they allow these people to protest. They don't social distance. They don't do this. They don't do that. So why even shut down the country?
Precisely.
You're letting all these people gather, but yet how many gun rallies have been canceled because they said it's because of due to you can't social distance? They were complaining about that stuff up in Michigan. Now I'm not saying not to protest this despicable act by the police department, but if you're going to shut down gun rallies and you're going to shut down the majority of the country, you're going to have to tell these people, like, look,
well,
you can't do this.
No, they're not doing that. They're, as a matter of fact, saying don't use the COVID-19 as a means to shut down protests. They're actually saying that. But it's protests they agree with, not protests they disagree with, and that's the difference.
Our idiot governor let them do their rallies up here that only, in my opinion, made things worse. She didn't like it, but she said she wasn't going to trample on their First Amendment rights. And she was there saying they need to wear masks and they need to social distance and they need to do all that crap. And of course they weren't. But these aren't rallies that are being organized and set up on the Capitol lawn. They're blocking bridges, they're burning down buildings, they're doing all this other stuff. If these
aren't permitted protests.
Looting is permitted protest?
No, what I'm saying is these are not permitted protests. These are not permits. These are not protests or rallies for which they've obtained a permit and jumped through all the legal hoops that they should.
And if you look at some of the actions, some of the people, law enforcement and government, they're okay with it. They're okay with these people being out in groups, not social distancing, not wearing PPE, not this, not that. Because, they gotta side with certain groups in order to get reelected.
Yep.
Well, if that's the case, then why did you pull my kid out of school? Why did you close down my auto factory? Why can't I go to the grocery store 24 hours a day? Why can't you? So it's just more proof that you can't say it's okay for one thing, but not okay for another. And on the other hand, there aren't enough cops and jail cells to lock up 50,000 protesters either, or rioters or looters or whatever the hell you want to call them. But it just goes to show we need to turn everything back on right now and walk away from this nonsense, because that's all it is. Otherwise, everybody who is looting is supposedly going to be twitching dead in 2 weeks from COVID-19.
Yep. Out in the chat, I want to catch this before I miss it. Doggone it. I really need to get me a mouse for this thing. Calaveras 32 Special says, if people have locked gates and long driveways, someone jumps gate and runs up to try and burn your house and vehicle, then what? Well, if they're trying to burn your vehicle, let them go. Property can be replaced. People can't. If they're trying to burn your house, waste them. What I was talking about was the extension of castle doctrine in Ohio. In Ohio, castle doctrine does not extend past the walls of your house. On your property and its curtilage, no. Inside your house or inside your vehicle, yes. But, hey, arson is arson is arson. If they're trying to burn down your house with you in it, smoke them. That's what I say. Keep in mind that I'm not a lawyer and this is not legal advice. This is just the opinion of one fat loudmouth with a camera and a microphone. Don't do this at home. Yeah. Don't. Okay, where else? I think someone said that these are communist organized protests and whatnot. And yeah, I believe so. I believe you're absolutely correct. There are, you see people, they've put out these pallets of bricks and rocks, and they've done supply dumps of milk and water and stuff, milk to wash the pepper spray out of their eyes. So yes, I believe these are being organized, and they are. We've got advertisements on Craigslist by left-wing organizations wanting protesters, paying them $25 an hour. So yeah, this is definitely organized. But resistance is organized as well. We have a lot of business owners who aren't going to allow themselves to be taken out like that. Let's watch this video.
Let me tell you.
This is from a tweet from Fox 11 Los Angeles. A group of alleged looters square off against business owners in Van Nuys as police converge onto the scene. The tense moments were captured live in front of our Fox 11 news camera.
So let me tell you what's going on. So these guys in the vehicles, let's get a little bit closer. This vehicle and those guys over there got out of the other vehicle. There's a gold store in the parking lot, and they were heading to it. And these guys came out and they said, "No, you're not."
Wow.
And
so that for those that maybe can't see it, it's a street scene. There is a grocery store, and then across the alley, there's like a pawn shop / gold shop. There are a couple shop owners out there with shotguns, with bandoliers of shotgun shells across their chests, telling a group of looters across the alley, "No, you're not going into our neighbor's business."
They're having a standoff here.
Oh my God.
Arguing about why they're not being allowed to break into the place. So I'm going to kind of let you listen to this.
So these are looters
Yes.
squaring off with community members
Maybe.
holding weapons on the
Yes.
street.
Yes.
And where are all those cops
Now
that just drove past you?
They're 3 blocks down.
Yeah.
This is really something here to see those store owners who want to protect.
And they're about, they're milling around right now, and cops are about to show up, and then you'll see these guys scatter like a bunch of roaches.
Their own business, yet they're by a business that is so vulnerable. Okay, so that's her family telling her to go back? Yeah. Christina, go ahead.
Yes. Telling her to, because the 2 vehicles, there's actually 3 vehicles. And what is happening is that, they parked in front of if you see the Buy Gold sign, there's a place for it inside the parking lot. And they don't want them to go in there. They were heading that way. They did not get in, but they don't want to be told what to do. So it's a standoff. Now, the officers they went down the street past us, and you can see probably the lights about 2 blocks down. But right now, they're just going to... Hold on. Let me put my microphone near. Let me talk to him.
Of course, we've got to be careful about some language here.
It's my family business. Stop. We're closed. We're closed.
They're like, hey, we're closed. This is my family business. I'm not going to let you tear it down, basically.
We're closed.
Were those guys going into the gold store?
Huh?
What, those guys? What's going on?
Dude, we're closed, bro.
Okay, they're kind of busy, but that's what we saw.
Gosh, Christina, it really just seems so scary and so dangerous there.
Comes the cops. They're trying
And the
to flag
cops
them
show up.
down.
The looters scatter.
We're trying to flag
Then
them.
the cops, and here's the part of it that this video is not showing. Then the cops disarm the shopkeepers and give them all kinds of hell. Take their shotguns, and eventually they release them. They let them go because they're not going to arrest them because they didn't really do anything wrong. But yeah, it was a close thing on them. But people are standing up to this. People are not allowing these criminals. See, I almost call them protesters, but these guys aren't protesters. They're criminals. They're thugs. They're looters. They're scumbags. They're not allowing these scumbags to tear down their livelihood and destroy everything that they've built. And I am 100% behind that. Patriot of Dark says, what? What are these guys protecting? A donut shop or a coffee shop? I think it was a grocery store. It was a small corner grocery. But that's not the only place doing it. This is not the only instance of this. There are others. This is a piece from FoxNews.com. California liquor store owner uses AR-15 to protect his property from looters. George Floyd unrest. A California liquor store owner said, by the way, this is by Bradford Betts from Fox News 4 days ago. A California liquor store owner said he stood in front of his business in Santa Monica armed with an AR-15 to discourage looters. The looting in Santa Monica amid nationwide unrest sparked by the death of George Floyd, a black Minneapolis man who died last week after a white police officer held his knee on Floyd's neck for more than 8. No. I don't want your ad. The owner of the liquor store, who only identified as Joe, told CBS LA he and his friends stood in front of the business with guns to discourage potential looters. It was a good thing I had my customers and friends by my side because it was pretty scary, Joe told the station. Joe said he and his friends helped nearby businesses discourage looters as well. Santa Monica was one of many cities throughout the U.S. ransacked over the weekend by rioters seeking to co-opt the largely peaceful protests. To quell the unrest, the city enacted a 1 p.m. curfew Monday for its business districts and 4 p.m. for the rest of the city. But that's not all. In this piece from Breitbart.com by Joel Pollack from 31 May 2020, armed civilian turns away would-be looters from REI in Santa Monica. An armed civilian stood with an unarmed female protester on Sunday at the door of the REI store in Santa Monica, California, turning away a group of would-be looters who tried to smash into the store during a Black Lives Matter protest. An earlier peaceful Black Lives Matter demonstration along Ocean Boulevard to protest the death of George Floyd at the hands of police in Minneapolis, Minnesota last week turned violent as looters targeted nearby retail stores. KTTV Fox Los Angeles journalist Coco McAboy was filming with her crew as a group of masked, black-clad white males started smashing in the glass doors of the REI store on the corner of 4th Street and Santa Monica Boulevard. A young, slender woman with a sign reading, "End all violence," stood at the doors and pleaded with the looters to stop. They attacked her, pulling her arm to move her away from the doors, but she returned to her position. She was joined by a large man with a sign that read, "We protest, no loot." The attackers even threw a smoke bomb as they left, but the two stood their ground. It later transpired that the man was carrying a concealed weapon. Natalie and Zashawn later spoke to McAboy on live television, and Zashawn revealed that he was armed. Let's see what this says. And there's pictures of the looters pulling her out of the way and trying to smash through. Someone threw a rock or something at her.
Look at this. This is a business. Coco, can you tell what business this is?
It's called recreational equipment. It seems right now REI actually.
REI.
It's what this business is. It's really.
So you got always trying to ram through with the skateboard.
You can see that there was someone with really
Video doesn't have any sound, by the way.
And this woman here with a sign saying "End all violence," literally.
And up comes the Sean.
Wow. And at one point, it put her in a really dangerous position because people were trying.
And they're sending these guys away, telling them to get.
Yeah.
Even though they did throw a smoke bomb. What a bunch of scumbags.
Yeah, it's getting a little hostile here, as you can see. This woman, though, is very brave. She has literally
Petulant children.
who's right there with her, trying to talk to these people.
He threatened to pull a gun on me, as Sean said of one of the looters. Thank God that I was able to tell them I carry. You're not supposed to do that, I told him. You need to back off. I was also recording. Once he saw the phone and he knew I was carrying, he stopped and he left. And I'm just thankful to God that I remained safe. Natalie told McAvoy that she and Zashawn came to the protest not only to support the cause, but also to protect local businesses. We're here for the protest, but when we see people looting, it dilutes the cause, she said. Zashawn added passionately, this is about George Floyd. This is not about a selfish game. This is about all the suffering that we have been put through. People of color, that we don't have anything, but we can't take it out on other people. These local people, they have nothing to do with this. And George Floyd would be upset. In 2018, Santa Monica schools joined nationwide walkouts in solidarity with Democrats' efforts at gun control. The city of Santa Monica imposed a 4 p.m. curfew on Sunday in response to the escalating violence. Well, what's her name? Natalie, is it? Natalie and Zashawn are doing it right. They are, Natalie and Zashawn are doing it right. That's the way to do it. They're protesting. They're standing up for what they believe in. They are petitioning for redress of their grievances, and they're doing so in a peaceful manner, and they're not tolerating scumbags hijacking their cause because they're right. It does dilute the message when you allow this kind of thing to distract from what should be the focus. What do you guys think? Were they right? Were they wrong? Were they dumb to risk themselves like that? Was it a heroic thing? What do you guys think?
That was risky, man. That's risky business. I don't know if I would do it, but again, I probably wouldn't be down there doing the protesting. Not because I don't agree with what happened or agree with what happened. It's just when certain things like this happen, I try not to get involved. But good on them, I guess. I mean, if you want to go and try and defend somebody else's property, that's you, man. I mean, I just think that these people, I see it all the time, and I've been seeing it a lot on other people's channels talking about, these businesses can rebuild, they could lose their stuff and they can rebuild. But I'm going to throw this in your ear, man. If these people don't defend their stores and they get looted and they get burnt down, first of all, what if their insurance doesn't cover that? Then they're ruined. Their life is financially ruined, and they'll have to, find a different course to do something. The next thing that happens, what if these people have their stuff burnt down, looted, and they move their business out of that community? So then you lose that. And the third thing that I've sitting here listening to this story is, what if they do come back and they do rebuild, but they jack the prices up on everything? When all these people do these things, I always say it, there's a cause and an effect. And, the causes are people that are out of bounds and doing this stuff. And the effect is those three things that I talked about. So, I mean, in retrospect, good on those people. I mean, they probably saved that person's business from being in shambles and financial ruins. But for me, I mean, first of all, I'm not going to be there, and second of all, I mean, you're taking a risk. You're risking your life. I mean, look at all the protesters that are doing it right, but then look at all the looters that aren't doing it right, and they are not having a care in the world of what happens to you. So it's up to you whether you want to put your life on the line or not.
What do you think, Squib?
You know, after George Bush said, you're either with us or you're with the terrorists. He made no distinction. There was no gray area. And this is the same sort of perspective you could have with regard to looters and rioters versus protesters. If there's a curfew and you're out after curfew, you're guilty. If you hold a protest and it's peaceful and you follow the law, whether you have to file a permit or you can only have so many people, you can only do it in a certain area or whatever it is, as long as you and everybody there follows the law, then you're fine. But as soon as it turns into something else, even if it's somebody else who you didn't invite shows up and ruins the whole thing, you've got to really rethink this stuff. They're not going to know the difference between you and the guy who just threw the brick. So that's something you need to think about. So I know that some people don't like the idea of these curfews, and I know some people think that we some of this stuff is overreaction. I've heard some crap about the military being deployed, and I don't think people understand how exactly the military would be deployed. It's not what you'd think. It's not what a lot of people think. It ain't the movies, people. All right. The thing is, at this point, this has gone on so long, and it's been in so many different cities. It's not about George Floyd. As a matter of fact, I almost think it never was about George Floyd. And if there are people out there who've done peaceful demonstrations and stuff like that, and they say, yes, it is. Okay. I suppose if you're doing demonstration at City Hall, at the state capitol, or in front of a police department, and you keep it peaceful and you follow the law, then okay, it's about George Floyd. Everything else isn't. I don't even care if it started off as just a march. Where was it? Now, I will say this. I watched some footage on CNN where they were marching down the street. Nobody was throwing bricks. Nobody was busting out windows. They were literally just marching down the street, and they opened fire on them with tear gas from two different angles. And I'm like, you guys are watching. The city's burning down blocks away. You're too afraid to go over there and deal with those guys. But these people who aren't doing anything, yeah, it is, I mean, they literally were just marching. These are the ones you're going to go after. You're going to have to go after the soft targets because you're not man enough to go over there and handle the real problem. So I see problems at every facet of this, but it's not about George Floyd. It just isn't. I mean, this is, and if you really want proof of that, Kingpin did a great video about this, about why weren't you upset about this, and why weren't you upset about this, and why weren't you, but you're upset about this, and I think that video says it all.
Yeah. Patriot in the Dark says, what was it? What's the exact quote? It says, all the protests in Flint have been peaceful because there's nothing to loot. Victor Hernandez says, looters going to loot, and fat people with rifles would last 5 minutes in a firefight if it involved tactical movement. Hey, don't underestimate the fat guys. Let's see. Chris Fulmer says he really wished there were names when the panel starts talking. I missed the intro to the panel. Well, Chris, up in the Outlaw Josie Wales there is Squibload, and RC is Roll Call 219. The icon with the AR and the mask and whatnot, that's me. Let's see. Where else? What are we looking at? Yeah, Dude Esquire says most insurance won't cover riots. Let's see where else. David Campbell says the protests and riots are a distraction. The imminent crash of the dollar, hyperinflation, and the grand solar minimum are what everyone should be paying attention to when the food shortages. Okay. Guy that comments says pro-gun people shouldn't defend anti-gun businesses. Let government and gun laws protect them. I see what you're saying. I think we shouldn't patronize anti-gun businesses, but right's right and wrong is wrong. And looting is wrong. So I don't really have a problem with it. All right, let's see. There's warning one. Mr. Batsoup, don't come in here just posting nonsense. If you have something to contribute, please feel free. Don't be a dumbass. Okay, so moving right along. There's at least one store owner. Looks like he took Joe Biden's advice. This is from Breitbart by A.W.R. Hawkins from June 2nd. Double-barrel shotgun used to keep looters from California gym. Mendy's Gym on Van Nuys Boulevard in California posted a man with a double-barrel shotgun at the front door to keep looters from entering the premises. The man, dressed in black, can be seen resting the shotgun in a photo published by Bill Malugan of Fox, Los Angeles. Armed with a shotgun and plenty of muscle, Mendy's Gym in Van Nuys Boulevard just repelled a group of looters who targeted the businesses. Breitbart News on June 20th reported that armed business owners turned back looters in Van Nuys. A television reporter from Fox, yeah, that was the whole thing we just saw. And then in Minneapolis, about the black business owners who stood shoulder to shoulder, and we looked at that last week. Good on them. And then it goes to talk about Grady Judd. So, as we can see, people just aren't putting up with this, and I think it's great. Maybe go a little far, I know. But Rob New York Outcast says, I broke curfew to check on my mom when I couldn't contact her for half the day. I'm guilty, I guess. Well, you know what, man? I would have been guilty too. Here's another one from a website called AsianDawn.com. It is from May 31st, 2020. This is from Asian business owner starts blasting in Georgia. An Asian man known as Slim the Jeweler, owner of Panda Jewelers, successfully defended his business in Georgia last night, according to AWA. Apparently, looters, some of them armed, tried to converge into a business plaza Saturday night. Some of the armed looters began shooting at Slim the Jeweler, so he decided to fire back with his semi-automatic rifle. The looters quickly dispersed. He's like, well, they fired at me first, so we fired back. Then they started scrambling to get away from the gunfire. Some looters wanted to test their luck and ran back into the business plaza. That's when Slim the Jeweler started popping off multiple rounds into the crowd. Looters then got the hint and ran back away.
Oh, shit.
All right, nah, hell no, I'm getting out of here.
Just driving out of the parking lot, there's people running across the street, going up into the business plaza. Yeah, now they're turning around, scattering like roaches.
Yo, somebody started shooting.
After the pop gunfire.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, well, you know what I say about stupid games and stupid prizes, people. If you play one, you win the other. But they're not just targeting grocery stores and liquor stores and shoe stores and jewelry stores. Oh no. Some of the more sophisticated criminal types are targeting gun stores. This is from Bearing Arms from 2 p.m. on June 3rd by Tom Knighton. More gun stores targeted as cities rioted. When there's a riot going on, the police have to be focused on just a few things. Number one is to make sure the government itself is safe. That includes their own personal safety. After that, they focus on the riot itself. Other crimes often take a back seat for the time being for what should be obvious reasons. Unfortunately, this makes it easier for some to get away with other crimes, especially when it comes to gun store burglaries. As noted on Tuesday, gun stores were hit by criminals while looters rampaged throughout the various cities. Well, those particular gun stores weren't the only ones targeted. First, we have this one in Dallas. Investigators need your help finding out who stole dozens of firearms at the DFW gun range and training center early Sunday morning. $10,000 rewards being offered for any tips that could lead to the arrest of 3 men who ransacked the place. The thieves took 46 firearms. They broke in about 1:30 Tuesday morning while the rioting was still continuing. In other words, the criminals at least seized on the opportunity the riots presented to break in and steal numerous guns. And that's actually the best case scenario. The worst case is that these were looters who wanted to arm themselves against police and National Guard troops that may try to quell the rioting. And it wasn't the only gun store in Texas hit, either. 32 guns were stolen out of a Pflugerville gun range, and just a few minutes later, thieves attempted to break into a South Austin gun shop. Right now, it's not believed the cases are linked, and the ATF is getting involved in locating these stolen guns. Security cameras captured the moment a suspect pulls out a gun from his hoodie and points it at Central Texas Gun Works. The last thing I want to do is have any of my guns on the streets of Austin, Travis County, Texas, and use illegally, said owner Michael Cargill. While thieves came up empty-handed in this case, just a few minutes earlier, a gun range in Pflugerville was broken into. A total of 32 guns were stolen from Red's indoor range on West Pecan Street. The ATF is now getting involved to locate the firearms. Between the thefts we talked about on Tuesday and these, somewhere in the neighborhood of 150 guns are on the streets in criminal hands, all at least in part due to the rioting that took place in various cities. With luck, these are criminals looking to cash in on the situation and little else. If so, they'll likely screw up and be caught easily enough, hopefully before any of these guns end up in the hands of people likely to use them for criminal acts. The question is, are we that fortunate? At this point, it's impossible to say. I can't help but fear that this is for some more nefarious purpose. Then again, it's also possible the last few days have pegged my paranoid meter. Let's all hope that's the case. Of course, not all gun shop burglaries have been successful, as this piece from Fox 5 New York shows. This is by Steve Keeley from 3 days ago. Armed burglary block of Front Street in the Pennsport section of the city. Officials say the owner of the gun store, Firing Line Inc., was inside his business guarding it because they had experienced a break-in attempt on Sunday evening. When a crew of armed burglary suspects reportedly attempted to break in, the store's owner saw them on surveillance video and then heard them coming up the steps to the store. One of the individuals that broke into the property pointed a handgun at him, Chief Inspector Scott Smalls told Fox 29's Steve Keeley. And that's when the store owner fired his own weapon, striking the one perpetrator at least one time in the head, and he collapsed, dropping his gun between his legs. Medics pronounced that man dead at the scene. At least 2 or 3 other individuals in the attempted looting fled the scene. At least 2 or 3 other individuals involved in the attempted looting fled. Why did they repeat that sentence? Whoever edited that should get kicked in the ass. Officials say another man is at an area hospital with a gunshot wound to the shoulder and believe he is likely a member of the same looting crew. Cops are, however, still to confirm that connection as they wait to get a bullet from surgeons. A pair of large bolt cutters were found at the scene, officials confirmed. So, again, stupid games, stupid prizes. That's what I say. If you play the one, you can expect the other, and you should expect the other. But it's not just store owners who are banding together to protect their property. It's not just store owners who are protecting their own individual property. It's the citizenry, too. This is a piece from NPR. I know, NPR, but this is from June 3rd, 2020 by Layla Fidel. Armed neighborhood groups form in the absence of police protection. Ceci Ibarez knocks on the 3 apartment doors above her restaurant in a neighboring taqueria just before curfew. A woman opens the door. Her 2 young children are inside. Remember, she says to them in Spanish, same thing as yesterday. I'm going to come check on you. If there's anything you guys need, give us a call right away. Meanwhile, A few men climb through the window and onto the roof to set up semi-automatic weapons as the curfew begins in Minneapolis. It's something Barres never thought she would have to do as a small business owner. But then she found out these apartments were occupied. Material things we can replace, that's true, she says. But there are families here. These aren't empty buildings. As break-ins and fires raged in the first days of mass protests over the killing of yet another black man in an encounter with police, the city seemed to descend into a security vacuum. She says the police disappeared from this neighborhood. That's when she and others started forming patrols to include people with licensed weapons. I'm the one that's checking everyone, she says. If you're up here with a gun and you're not supposed to be here and you don't have a license to carry, then I don't allow you even to go to the rooftop. Only with people with guns are on the rooftop. But is this a path to vigilante justice? It's not something that I would want, but we've seen how, for at least the first couple days, we were left alone, she says. There were no cops that would come around. So what are we to do? Just stand there and do nothing? Her group, Security Latinos de la Lake, is one of many neighborhood watch groups sprouting up across the Twin Cities and in other parts of the country as dozens of mostly peaceful protests continue every day, sometimes in the face of violence from law enforcement. Boy, what a lying piece of shit sentence that is. These aren't mostly peaceful protests. Or rather, the protests are peaceful, but, the riots that come afterward aren't. Tear gas, rubber bullets, and pepper spray. The Twin Cities have largely calmed, but Barres says she wasn't even able to get through to 911 until Monday. When asked about the lack of police presence, a spokesman for the Minneapolis Police Department said in an email that the department is facing an unprecedented situation. He added that citizens who need help should call 911. The department is also aware of these neighborhood groups. In fact, the police chief and officers have met with some, and the department is not concerned as long as they're following the law. Barres' restaurant is right next to Hector Hernandez's taqueria. The boarded-up windows outside are spray-painted with George Floyd's final words as he begged for his life from police. Mama, I can't breathe. This community stands in solidarity with the demonstrations. It is spray-painted on the walls, tagged on the plank wood boards that cover the broken glass of the storefronts. But many here say they don't understand the destruction, and they don't believe demonstrators protesting police brutality and systemic racism are behind much of the damage on this block. These are businesses and landmarks largely built by black and brown communities. Just before curfew, the local supermarket manager, Mauro Madrigal, briefs a group of residents and business owners in the parking lot behind the store. He focuses on safety practices. Move dumpsters that could be set on fire away from buildings. Have sand and dirt ready to smother flames. And only share threats you see, not rumors you hear. He passes out a flyer in Spanish and English to the multiracial group. So far, those are pretty good pieces of advice that anybody in that situation probably should follow. Good on him. Our neighborhood is under threat from white supremacists coming into Minneapolis, it says. He says he and others say they came to that conclusion because they've seen trucks and cars without plates or with out-of-state license plates, Iowa, Wisconsin. They've seen men with backpacks coming into the neighborhood. And there are the online videos circulating, one of a white man in a gas mask in black with an umbrella methodically smashing out the windows of an AutoZone. An African-American walks up to stop him, others ask who he is, and he walks away. Well, Mr. Madrigal, I would say that you're probably wrong on who we're talking about. I would suggest that it's Antifa, not white supremacists. All of this has fueled speculation and rumor among protesters on the streets, all the way up to the state and local officials. Right now, in the chaos of an uprising, the who and why are just not clear. It could be impassioned protesters moved to burn buildings, desperate to be finally heard. It could be anarchists or white supremacists or opportunists or all of the above. But William Martinez is convinced that whoever is doing it wants to destroy the businesses Latinos built in the Minneapolis neighborhood of Powderhorn Park. It's important to tell people we're not going to shoot anybody, he says. We don't have that idea. But we want to prevent people who are going to hurt Latino families. Martinez says all the businesses in this community, only 2 Latino shops have survived where people can buy food. Now, any unfamiliar vehicle or person sparks suspicion. Martinez's group coordinates with an indigenous motorcycle group across the street surrounding the Red Lake Nation Embassy. He wears a neon yellow t-shirt with black lettering, Security Latinos de la Lake. In part, he says, it's to make sure any law enforcement that might be suspicious of black or brown people know who they are. You know, we are brown. We know exactly what's going on, he starts to laugh. As they finalize plans for the night and pass out fire extinguishers to neighbors, a group of people roll up in a truck, and a white man named Jordan, he wouldn't give his last name but described himself as working with anarchists, walks over in a bulletproof vest with a yellow walkie-talkie attached. He approaches Madrigal and Hernandez. He explains he and others will be in the empty building next door to the market to provide security for a nearby theater. So we should have close to 40 people, Jordan says. Does anybody have weapons? Hernandez asks. Yeah. Everyone armed is licensed. They coordinate channels on the walkie-talkies and share where their people will be. When Jordan walks away, Madrigal says he has never seen him before. All these people, I don't know them. I don't know where they're from, but they're here helping us, so that's all. I'm glad that they're here to help. I would be suspicious of that if it were me. As curfew begins, the group splits off into their homes and businesses. Inside Hernandez Taqueria, he and Barres, the owner of Avi's Cafe next door in the same building, worked with others to barricade the front door. On the road of this neighborhood, other groups have blocked off their streets, put warning signs up that people are watching and that trespassing would have consequences. So, there we have a neighborhood banding together to defend themselves from all this garbage that's going on. Do you guys think that's a good idea? Do you think it's a bad idea? Do you think that they should just leave it to the police? Or do you think that they have no choice but to take these matters in their own hands? What do you think here on the panel and out in the chat?
I think it's a good idea, man. I mean, I was talking about this the other day at work. We all can't carry a cop on our back. And in those kind of situations, they're not coming for you, man. They're not going to come and bail you out. The fire department probably can't get through. If you look at a lot of the videos, you know, those people block and throw all the stuff in the streets, and the fire department can't get to you. The police department's overwhelmed. What are you going to do? You're going to have to protect yourself. So we talk about this in the gun community all the time. You know, you can't carry a cop on your back, or you can't, you call 911, the cops are, minutes away, blah, blah, blah. I mean, you got to do something, and you got to protect your family. You got to protect yourself. You got to protect your livelihood. I mean, what do you expect these people to do? Call 911? She just explained. You can't get through there. Everything's jam-packed. Everything's jammed up in these kinds of situations. You have to protect yourself. You have to have personal responsibility. And I think these people were doing the right thing. They're protecting themselves, the people in their neighborhoods. And I give them kudos and all the props in the world. And I'm glad they didn't have to shoot anybody.
Yeah. I hear you. There was a comment out here that I wanted to address, but I can't find it, dang it.
Do you have trolls in your chat?
No. I timed one of them out, and I think he went away. Jefferson Martial Arts, by the way, welcome to the chat. JMA says, here's the problem I see with this whole thing. People are getting confused and thinking the protesters, the rioters, and looters are all one into be when it's three separate groups, I guess. And guy that comments asks, I'm still wondering if the Van Nuys store defenders got their hardware confiscated / stolen. I don't know. I have not heard. Have not been able to find out whether their shotguns were returned them or not.
All right.
Jefferson,
the looters,
JMA says,
the rioters,
I have to agree, protest and then go to F home.
The difference between the rioters and the protesters. All right, here's the thing. This George Floyd guy, his family, instead of doing the right thing and calling for peace and calling for justice and giving the system time and saying, let's not forget, let's not let them just brush us under the rug. And no, they're calling for violence. They're pissing on his memory, and they're thugs themselves. And I'm not siding with the cops, but I'm saying if they're calling for violence, which I saw them on TV calling for violence, they're thugs. All right. The right thing to do would be to use that platform. All these TV stations want to interview them and all this stuff, to be calling for people to calm the hell down and to cut this out, and that this dishonors his memory, and this dishonors the whole cause, the whole reason about the bringing police brutality to the forefront, right?
Yep.
It's counterproductive to what they say it's about. All right. As far as all these protests going off all over the country and continuing to go on and go on and go on and go on, it's a bunch of Me Too's. Okay. It isn't about George Floyd or any of that other stuff, or whether it was an incident in their city that's similar and they want to, it's a bunch of Me Too's. Guys, if you want to do the right thing and help end these riots, say, you know what, we protested enough. We go, well, it's my right. I'm not saying to shit on the First Amendment. I'm saying do the right thing and go, we've protested enough. All right. And go home. Anybody left out on the street is a rioter. Problem solved. Calaveras, you can only defend one home. Nancy Pelosi lives on one side of the street. Donald Trump lives on the other side of the street. An equal size of rioters are heading towards both homes. And you can only stand in front of one and defend it. Which one do you defend? Now, if you say Nancy Pelosi, because you're not going to play politics, you just protected the home of the person that's going to take away your rights. That's what I was talking about having only so many resources and about only being able to use them one place. You can't be in 10 places at once. It's not like one is 100 miles away and the other one's a block next door, that they're about equal distance and they both have equal danger. And you have to make a decision. Where are you going to take it? You're going to take it where those people have the same interests you do. Those people are interested in protecting your rights, your freedoms. You're not going to go, you know what, I'm going to skip this guy over here that wants to protect me for this person over here that as soon as I protect them, they're going to stab me in the back. That's what I was talking about. Okay, thanks, Budget.
Yeah, no problem. Speaking of Pickle, he says, with the talk of defunding and disbanding police, people will have to take care of themselves. I know, right? Minneapolis is talking about disbanding their police force. How asinine can you be? But I digress. Patriot in the Dark says, I am suspicious of anyone carrying an umbrella, especially if they're singing in the rain with no rain. I saw what you did there. I agree. Nanja Ninja, interesting name, says cops harass gun owners rather than arrest Antifa hoodlums. Yes, they do, because they know that by and large, we're law-abiding. Let's see. New York Outcast says we need more sheriffs and district attorneys telling people to defend themselves and property. Well, they don't like that kind of thing. Most politicians don't. They want you dependent upon them. Gabriel says, now I couldn't join Sunday's chat, but are we going to have double moron of the week tonight or just single? Single. Well, we got a few candidates, but yeah. Mad Sexy says, wow, I didn't know my speaker could get that loud. Oh, I'm sorry. All right. Let's see. We got a couple more things to talk about still, because we are not done. Because people defending themselves and defending their property and defending their loved ones, not that you should use lethal force to defend property, but, people being forced to use lethal force as a result of defending their property aren't necessarily going well all the time. No, wait, wrong damn thing. There we go. This is what I want. This is a piece from bearingarms.com from June 3rd, 2020 by Cam Edwards. Bar owner who shot protester after he was attacked will face grand jury after all. A day after a county prosecutor in Omaha, Nebraska announced that a bar owner who shot and killed a protester who was attacking him wouldn't face charges. The same official reversed course and says he'll now be referring the case to a grand jury. In other words, he caved to political pressure. Douglas County Attorney Don Klein has said Wednesday that he will petition a grand jury to look at evidence in the James Scurlock case. Scurlock, an unarmed 22-year-old black man and not protester, he was a frickin' looter scumbag, was shot and killed by Omaha bar owner Jake Gardner early Saturday morning. Klein said he believed Gardner, who is white, feared for his life when he shot Scurlock, who jumped on top of Gardner after the bar owner had already fired 2 shots. Gardner had an expired concealed carry license, which makes his carrying a misdemeanor offense. That would be charged by the city attorney as opposed to the county prosecutor. The grand jury will be looking at whether or not Gardner committed a crime when he shot James Scurlock, but Klein laid out the evidence, or lack thereof, when he briefed reporters on Monday. Scurlock and others could be seen speaking with the business owner in front of the Hive Saturday night after one of the members of the group had shoved the man's father to the ground. The man, who Klein initially did not name but later confirmed was Jake Gardner, is seen backing away from the group and Scurlock, asking them to leave him alone and not to damage his business. So he's trying to retreat and he's verbally asking them not to do anything. Gardner lifted his shirt to display a handgun in his waistband. The group attacked Gardner and they fell into a puddle on the street in front of the bar. Gardner grabbed his gun and fired 2 shots, which caused one member to run away from Gardner. Scurlock was seen tackling Gardner from behind while Gardner was trying to stand. Gardner later told police Scurlock had him in a chokehold, and witnesses said they heard Gardner say, "Get off me," several times. Gardner fired 1 shot, which struck Scurlock in the collarbone. He died after being taken to Nebraska Medical Center. The bar owner was interviewed with lawyers present. He said the first shot was a warning shot. He said Scurlock jumped on him, and he was scared Scurlock was going to take his gun. He fired in self-defense. He was scared he would lose his life or severe bodily injury, Klein said. Gardner was in police custody from Saturday night to Sunday night at Omaha Police Headquarters. He has shown he has a gun. He made it clear he was armed. He said when someone was on top of him that they said they were going to kill him, Klein said. Shortly after Klein's announcement, Scurlock's family began calling for a grand jury to decide whether Gardner should face charges. Honestly, I can't blame them for that. I also don't blame the Scurlocks for how the media has framed the story, which I believe is designed to intentionally stoke tensions. What? The media doing something like that? Never. Check out the CBS News story headlined, "A white bar owner shot and killed a black protester. He won't face charges." Well, hell, that headline right there tells you what they were trying to do. During protests in Omaha, Nebraska over the weekend, a black activist was shot and killed by a white bar owner after a fight broke out. Wow, yeah, that whole sentence right there is nothing but dirt trying to fan the flames. The county attorney said the shooter will not face charges because he was, quote, defending himself. James Scurlock, 22, was killed by Jacob Gardner, the owner of the Hive Bar and Gatsby Bar in Omaha's Old Market neighborhood, around midnight Saturday in the midst of protests against police brutality in George Floyd's death, i.e., when they were rioting and looting and burning and smashing and robbing. The Douglas County Attorney's Office determined Gardner acted in self-defense after interviewing the shooter and reviewing videos of the incident. There was a consensus that the actions of the shooter were justified, County Attorney Don Klein said during a briefing Monday. There wasn't any big disagreement about what happened here. According to prosecutors, the incident followed an altercation involving Gardner's father, who pushed several protesters when asking them to leave the bar. CBS News doesn't even mention the fact that Scurlock jumped on Gardner's back until paragraph 7, and never mentions that Gardner says Scurlock had him in a chokehold. One thing the report does mention is that Gardner's 68-year-old dad did shove a protester while asking or telling him to leave the bar. That individual then turned around and shoved Gardner's father, pushing him down to the ground. Again, I can understand personally why the family would want a grand jury to look at the case, and from a political/civil unrest perspective, it makes sense for a grand jury to look at the case. Still, there's also a very real danger that in this charged environment, Gardner could face an indictment that's based more on keeping calm in the streets rather than serving justice. Was Gardner's father justified in originally pushing a protester? I don't know. And if the city attorney wants to investigate to see if misdemeanor assault charges are warranted, I'd have no problem with that either. But that original shove isn't what led to Scurlock's death. Again, this is what happened after Gardner's father shoved a protester and the protester shoved him back, knocking him to the ground. Skurlock and others could be seen speaking with the business owner in front of the Hive Saturday night after one of the members of the group had shoved the man's father to the ground. The man, who Klein initially did not name but later confirmed was Jake Gardner, is seen backing away from the group and Skurlock asking them to leave him alone and not to damage his business. Gardner lifted his shirt to display a handgun in his waistband. The group attacked Gardner and they fell into a puddle on the street in front of the bar. Gardner grabbed his gun and fired 2 shots, which caused one member to run away from Gardner. As Gardner tries to stand, he's attacked by Skurlock, who jumps on his back. That's when Gardner fired, killing the 22-year-old. I'm not cheering the death of James Skurlock. I think it was a sad and senseless killing that didn't have to happen, but it also wasn't murder. It was pretty clearly a case of self-defense, and it didn't have to happen because Skurlock didn't have to assault Jacob Gardner. Street justice had already been served. A shove had been met with a shove. That incident was over, and then Gardner was assaulted after flashing his gun and warning them to not hurt his business. They decided to hurt him instead, first knocking him to the ground, and then, once he'd fired 2 warning shots and his attackers ran away, when he was attempting to get up. That's when Skurlock leapt onto his back and began assaulting him, and only then, after repeatedly yelling for Skurlock to get off him, did he fire the fatal shot. I think it sucks that James Skurlock is dead. I just don't think it was murder. You know the saying about grand juries and ham sandwiches, though. Prosecutors are expected to get indictments whenever they want, and now that the county prosecutor says he wants a grand jury to look at the evidence, there's going to be a lot of pressure to deliver an indictment, and we've already seen that the media is more interested in advancing a narrative that feeds unrest rather than simply reporting the facts that might bring some calming rationality to a supercharged situation. Klein said Wednesday afternoon that he's not wavering in his conclusion that the shooting was self-defense, but added that he was not afraid of having a decision I have made to be reviewed by others. Again, I understand the realities of the situation and why the decision was made to have a grand jury consider the evidence. I just hope the same pressure that led to Klein presenting the case to a grand jury won't be felt by the grand jurors themselves to deliver an indictment. Serving up a human sacrifice in order to stave off more looting and rioting by bringing a murder charge against Gardner would be an injustice based on the evidence that the county prosecutor laid out, but for the moment, it's still a very real possibility. Sounds to me like Attorney Klein is passing the old buck. You know, this right here, this is why I carry concealed carry insurance, why I have it. I go with USCCA, but US Law Shield and others are just as good. You know, it just depends on what particular program and budget and whatnot fits your needs. But I highly recommend that if you carry a firearm for self-defense, you should also get concealed carry insurance, because what Mr. Gardner is facing right now is going to be expensive. I can't afford that. So I'd rather pay my whatever, 30, 20 bucks, whatever the hell it is, a month, every month, than have to shell out $50, $60, $100, $500,000 for a criminal and civil defense. Something for you guys to think about out there. You guys have any thoughts on this incident?
Well, these are valuable lessons that you can learn in life when you carry a firearm. My thoughts are, you're totally right. You should have some kind of carry insurance. Regardless of who it is, you should have it. It's going to help you in the long run. The second example that we've learned from this is brandishing your firearm. Now, I've gone to a couple classes, and that's one of the worst things you could ever do, is lift up your shirt and show that you have a firearm. The only time you should show that firearm is when the excuse my language, when the stuff hits the fan and there's no other option, there's no more talking, and that's it. That firearm should come out, and you should shoot the person that's trying to do you harm. Backing away, picking up your shirt and showing that you have a gun, that's the wrong move, because that's either going to entice these people to jump on you like in this situation, or they're going to run back to either a car or somewhere else and grab their stuff, or they're going to pull their gun out and shoot you when your gun's still holstered. So
yeah, if it's time to show it, it's time to draw it.
yep, there's no once you've crossed that threshold, that gun better be coming out, and when it comes out, there better be a round down range, because see what the hesitation got when he backed up, showed his firearm, people jumped on him right off the get. If you're going to show your firearm, that thing's going to come out, and if you're just doing it to be, Johnny Muscle on the block, you're a moron, and you deserve everything you get. I agree that this shouldn't have happened. It did happen. I can understand that's his dad, but tons of mistakes in this. This is a great example of what not to do. And like Budget said, go get that insurance, man. This is gonna probably bankrupt his life. He thought his business was threatened. His business is probably gonna get taken from him, and he's gonna have to fight for his liberty. So
I'll never recover from this financially.
I never Carol Baskin, you be.
Defense Dad says, Budget, that's what spurred another round of rioting and looting in Omaha and here in Lincoln that night. Yeah, that sucks. I figured someone would use it as an excuse. Squib, yeah, I agree. It just sounds weird that they're rioting in Nebraska, right? Oh, JMA, that sucks. He says Palmetto State Armory just told him they can't send him his AKV because of Colorado state laws. Oh, that sucks, man. I'm JMA also says that's not murder. That's 100% self-defense. I don't care what anybody says. Yeah, I agree too. I think he made some mistakes, but I also think it was self-defense.
Oh, it definitely was self-defense, but I mean, he dug himself a hole, man. And it's sad situation. It was self-defense. I can get on board with that. But the way it went down, don't ever find yourself in this kind of situation. Don't. It's not gonna be pretty.
Defense Dad also says this story is why some people are a little worried about the 2A rally tomorrow at the Capitol. It's just on the other side of the building from where the BLM people will be. Yeah, that might be a powder keg. I hope things go well.
Yeah, because some of those guys in the Bureau of Land Management are jerks.
Well, yeah, look what they did to the Bundys, right?
Oh, wait, that was justified.
Okay, I'm pretty much caught up. All right. Moving on. Let's see, where am I with my topics? Gotta check. Where am I? Oh yeah. Now to something a little bit different. It's off the topic of the riots, but kind of still involved. Because getting into this, throwing her oar into the water, being the hypocrite that she is. From Breitbart, AWR Hawkins, June 3rd. Nancy Pelosi surrounded by guards as she walks among protesters. Video from Wednesday afternoon shows Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, Democrat, California, surrounded by guards as she walks near protesters. In video published by CNN, Pelosi can be seen walking under heavy foliage, surrounded by men in suits, ties, and sunglasses. The Hill described the men as Pelosi's security detail and noted that Pelosi was walking among a crowd of demonstrators outside the Capitol when the video was taken. Legislation in the House banning police from using chokeholds and ending the Defense Department program that gives surplus military-grade weapons to local police departments is expected soon. Pelosi told MSNBC's Joe Scarborough, "We'll be intense, proactive, and again, because the American people have identified with all of these injustices, we believe at long last, we may have some success in the United States Senate with it." Don't hold your breath. Pelosi's walk among protesters while surrounded by security comes after media outlets criticized President Trump for using security in his walk across Lafayette Park on Monday. Reason magazine suggested that Trump's use of the park police violated the First Amendment, but park police said they did not clear the crowd for Trump, but because protesters were throwing things. Yeah, well, Nancy Pelosi gets even better for us right now because, well, I'll just let you see this yourself. Pelosi suffers 10-second mental lapse on camera during press conference. CNS News by Craig Bannister, June 4th, 2020. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Democrat, California, appeared to experience a 10-second mental lapse Thursday during an on-camera press conference. Pelosi was reading from a letter she had sent to President Donald Trump earlier in the day expressing concerns about the increased militarization of law enforcement efforts in the nation's capital amid violent protests and riots ravaging the city. Watch this.
Well, I preface it by saying, as you probably saw, there's military on the steps of Lincoln Memorial. What is it? Now I'll read it to you. Soldiers on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial.
I think maybe Nancy needed a Snickers, right? Because she just wasn't herself. Am I mean for pointing that out and for kind of giggling about it?
See, that's what I mean. Never mind.
No, what? Say it, Squib. That's what you're here for.
Well, I guess if, an equal number of rioters were going to Trump's house and Pelosi's house, and you said, man, I got to pick one, he's definitely going to take away my rights. You might just be putting her out of her misery if you just went into Trump's house anyhow. Oh.
Yeah.
See, she's walking around. She's got all this protection. She got all this. She doesn't understand what it's like to be a real person. Really, if she really wanted to reach her constituents, she'd have the courage to walk around all these. They all vote for her, so what's she got to be worried about?
Or would if they lived in California?
It doesn't matter. They got all kinds of votes coming in from all over the place.
Well, that's true. Seven Wonders says, wow, no wonder she supports Biden. And speaking of Biden...
And now prepare yourself for another tale of stupidity in this episode of Moron of the Week.
This week, Joe's old Uncle Touchy, Joe Biden's place in Moron of the Week isn't honorary. He actually did and said something. This is from the Washington Free Beacon. By Stephen Gutowski and Don Rutz from June 1st, 2020. Biden promotes police protocol decried by gun safety experts. The former vice president said police should be trained to shoot protesters in the leg. Presumptive Democratic nominee Joe Biden said Monday police should be trained to shoot at the legs of assailants, which police training experts decry as impractical and dangerous. We also have to fundamentally change the way police are trained, he said. The idea that instead of standing there and teaching a cop when there's an unarmed person that's coming at them with a knife, yes, let me read that sentence again. The idea that instead of standing there and teaching a cop when there's an unarmed person that's coming at them with a knife, so they shoot him in the leg instead of in the heart is a very different thing. There's a lot of different things that can change. First off, Joe, if they have a knife, they're not unarmed. Okay? I mean, I can feel my blood pressure rise just reading this. I'm starting to get a headache. Ugh. Biden addressed parishioners and local leaders at a black church in Wilmington, Delaware, as riots tore across the country following the non-shooting death of George Floyd at the hands of Minneapolis police officer. He also said if elected, he would try to form a police oversight committee in the first 100 days of his presidency. The comments came as Biden attempts to separate himself from President Trump on how he would respond to the rioting and deal with tensions between police and the communities they serve. Jason Johnson, president of the Law Enforcement Legal Defense Fund, said he agreed with Biden that police should continually update their training, but said the specific idea of training officers to shoot at people's legs is a bad one. He said shooting a gun at somebody is and should always be considered use of deadly force in the law enforcement community, and the decision to use deadly force must be justified. Shooting at a person is deadly force regardless of what part of the body you aim at. They're trained to shoot center mass, but there is no option to shoot somewhere else and have it not be considered deadly force, he said. He said the scenario Biden articulated, where a suspect runs at a police officer with a knife, should certainly be considered an example of a deadly threat, and police are trained to use the most effective means to stop an assailant before they can do harm. In this scenario, the vice president talks about where a person is charging at a police officer with a knife. That is a deadly weapon. There's really no choice left to the officer but to use deadly force, and officers are trained to shoot center mass. They're not trained to shoot to kill. They're trained to shoot to stop. Rob Pincus, who has trained police in the use of firearms across the country, said Biden's advice is impractical because it is more difficult to hit an assailant in the leg and could still be potentially lethal. He said it has led to issues in the handful of overseas jurisdictions that have tried it. Legs move. It's much harder to hit a smaller moving target than it is to hit the chest, Pincus said. From a technical shooting skill standpoint, from a technical legal standpoint, it's not where we want to go at all. That's the problem they face in some parts of Europe, that you can shoot at somebody and not be using lethal force. Law enforcement officers are trained to only use their guns in lethal ways so as not to reduce the gravity of choosing to use deadly force. It sends the wrong message to prospective officers if they are taught that firearms can be used in non-lethal ways. To consider it a viable option to try to shoot to wound leaves a lot of gray area for what was someone's intention when they used the gun, Pincus told the Washington Free Beacon. We have simplified this issue to a great degree in the United States for law enforcement and personal defense by simply saying, you use a gun, it's lethal force. Period. Consider that carefully. Biden has made similarly controversial statements about the use of guns in the past. In 2013, the former vice president defended the Obama administration's gun control positions by saying that anyone concerned about self-defense should buy a double-barreled shotgun and fire it twice outside their homes if they feel threatened, even though such warning shots are illegal in many jurisdictions. If you want to protect yourself, get a double-barreled shotgun, Biden said. I promise you, as I told my wife, we live in an area that's wooded and somewhat secluded. I said, Jill, if there's ever a problem, just walk out on your balcony here, walk out, put up that double-barreled shotgun and fire 2 blasts outside the house. Washington state man arrested for illegally firing a shotgun later that year cited Biden's advice in his defense. Pincus said changing police training in order to open up the possibility of shooting with the intention to wound could have major repercussions. You really open up a can of worms legally if you start talking about a gun not being universally accepted as a lethal use of force, he said. And I think that's a really dangerous place that we shouldn't want to play in. As Second Amendment advocates, as law enforcement officers, I don't think any of us want to go there. And I got to agree with Rob on that one. I think it is an asinine prospect. So there we go for Joe Biden actually having a real and warranted spot in this week's Moron of the Week. But of course, there's more. This piece from Breitbart, AWR Hawkins, June 3rd. West Palm Beach mayor bans guns in response to rioters. West Palm Beach, Florida Mayor Keith James declared a 72-hour state of local emergency on May 31st, 2020 in response to riotous protests, and the declaration includes a ban on gun and ammunition sales throughout the city. Because, we have all these incidences of people using firearms to protect themselves from the looters and rioters, but, let's not let them buy any ammo or guns or anything else. The declaration is published online, begins by positing there has been an act of violence or flagrant and substantial defiance of or resistance to a lawful exercise of public authority. It continues by maintaining there is further risk of acts of violence and or defiance of authority, including widespread disobedience of the law and substantial injury to persons or property, all of which constitutes an imminent threat to public peace or order and to the general welfare of the city of West Palm Beach. So yes, let's remove our citizens' ability to defend themselves from it, because, that makes sense. Therefore, he declared a state of local emergency which bans the sale of or offer to sell, with or without consideration, any ammunition or gun or other firearm of any size or description. His declaration also bans the intentional display by or in any store or shop of any ammunition or gun or other firearm of any size or description. James's declaration also bans law-abiding citizens from carrying guns in public places for self-defense. The prohibitions are all in effect until 9 p.m. local time tonight. What a piece of shit. Yes, I know, right? There goes my PG-13, but this guy is. But wait, there's more. So West Palm Beach mayor, you are a contestant in Moron of the Week. But the Chicago mayor says, hey, hold my beer. Gun feed. Chicago mayor, do not use guns to defend yourself during the riots. Call the police and wait. Even though, like in Minneapolis, they can't even get through to 911. But let's see what this Politico has to say. And I can't hear the audio of the question that is being asked of her, so I have no idea. Probably about people using guns to defend themselves, what she thinks about it.
I'm glad you actually brought that up. And let me say this. Obviously, we're aware of the fact that Illinois is a concealed carry state and that many people have weapons at their disposal in their homes and their businesses. Do not take matters into your own hand. Call the police. We've seen tragedy happen in this country and recently when people felt like they could take matters into their own hand. Let me remind you of the killing of Mr. Arbery. Do not pick up arms and try to be the police. If there's a problem, call 911. We will respond. But I urge people to show restraint and do not take matters into your own hands.
Question from Greg Pratt.
Now, she brings up the Arbery situation, and, this is apples to oranges here. This isn't a situation where vigilantes are going after somebody that was going into an unfinished house. This is a situation where scumbags are literally burning businesses and burning places to the ground. Two completely different things, lady. But she's not the only one being an idiot. So, Chicago mayor, you're a contestant in Moron of the Week. But there's another coming up. This will be a four-way race. This is a piece from AmmoLand by Dave Workman, posted on June 2nd. And it takes us a couple minutes to get there, but it gets there. After Seattle riot, armed citizens guard small town as antis exploit try fails. When residents of Snohomish, Washington reportedly heard rumors that the violence which erupted in Seattle over the weekend might spill into their community, several took up arms and gathered on the small town's main street to guard local businesses from vandals, the Seattle Times reported. Carrying sidearms and semi-auto rifles, they reportedly kept an eye on passing vehicles along First Street, underscoring a Facebook message from Firearms Unknown in Riverside, California, posted by Alan Gottlieb, chairman of the Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms. The answer to the question, why do you need an AR-15 and 30-round magazines, is on every news channel today. Likewise, at Pistol Annie's Pawn Shop, what a great name. At Pistol Annie's Pawn Shop in Bonnie Lake, south of Seattle, several armed citizens showed up to protect the store from the threat of looting, according to KIRO Radio. Owner Melissa Denny posted the following message on social media. Update. I don't know what's worse, going through this or knowing my son is sitting at home worrying about me going through this. We are safe and the store is untouched. We've watched vehicle after vehicle go by with limo tint windows and many, many of the same ones over and over. I feel confident that the team of men and women who stood vigilant and will remain to do so as long as it's necessary kept us safe tonight. I'm beyond humbled and grateful for them all. There aren't enough words. There aren't enough thank yous. Fighting for our 2A is certainly going to mean even more after this. Anyone who can help stand with us would really help us, as it's going to be a long few days. We desperately need a shift change. At the other end of the spectrum, however, a wealthy Seattle gun prohibitionist's attempt at sarcasm as the riot ensued in his city's downtown area perhaps epitomized the anti-gun mindset to exploit every tragic event to further the gun control agenda. But in his effort to attack gun owners, venture capitalist Nick Hanauer essentially put his foot in his mouth. Nick Hanauer, in a tweet, just another upstanding citizen exercising his God-given right to open carry an AR-15. What is the problem? To which he is tweeting someone else's tweet of the balls of steel from last week. The unnamed security professional who stripped an AR-15 from the bad guy.
Also a concern about that building that is nearby, and it appears as if there's some folks that are trying to...
Which we see again here.
All right, it looks like there's some...
Reacting to an incident involving a demonstrator who was caught briefly on camera with an AR-15 rifle next to a vandalized Seattle police cruiser before he was disarmed at gunpoint, Hanauer tweeted, just another upstanding citizen exercising his God-given right to open carry an AR-15. What's the problem? His comment was in response to an earlier tweet from someone named Naveed Jamali, who posted an 18-second video clip of the incident that originally appeared live on KOMO News. The KOMO camera focused on the incident from several yards away as the masked demonstrator, appearing to fumble with the rifle, was rushed by a bearded man who grabbed the gun, motioned the demonstrator away, and cleared the weapon of its visibly loaded magazine. The armed citizen turned out to be a private security guard hired by KCPQ News, and the AR rifle had been taken from the patrol vehicle before the camera started filming. The dramatic disarm, many viewers and even a Como anchor called it heroic, probably prevented someone from being injured. Hanauer is a founder and one of the primary financial supporters of the Seattle-based Alliance for Gun Responsibility, the group behind a series of evergreen state gun control initiatives that have affected law-abiding gun owners without visibly reducing crime in the state, according to the FBI Uniform Crime Reports, etc., etc. So there we have a anti-gun idiot thinking that that was something it wasn't. Let's go back to the main. All right. So here we have our contestants for Moron of the Week. Joe Biden, the West Palm Beach mayor, the Chicago mayor, or Nick Hanauer. Squib, who wins? Who is the Moron of the Week?
Me, because I can't get to the mute button. No, Biden's going to get this one. Not just because he's Biden, but because, I mean, that was just...
Dumber than a box of rocks? Yeah.
You know, okay, so first off, Biden needs to understand there's this thing called the femoral artery. So you hit them in the leg, and they bleed out anyhow. What's the difference?
Of course females got arteries. What do you think he's trying to sniff for?
You know... and I mean, really, have you seen how bad most cops shoot? Now you're giving them a smaller target. You're really asking a lot.
Yeah, no kidding. Roll call. Who do you think should win? Uncle Touchy, the one of the two mayors, or Nick Hanauer?
Well, I always wear the shirt. My state always wears a shirt that, you know, it says "I'm with stupid" and it points over to Illinois. So I'm going to just Joe Biden. I'll pick him because we know everybody else is just stupid. But that was really stupid what he said.
Joe Biden. So, out there in the chat, this is where you get to tell me what you think. There are 23 of you watching now. Let's have some votes. Who wins? Joe Biden, West Palm Beach mayor, Chicago mayor, or Nick Hanauer? Chris Fulmer says he's torn on who to vote for.
Did you read Patriot's comment?
No, Patriot in the dark. Biden was really saying you should just shoot the guns out of their hands. Come on, you guys know better than that. I know, right? Chris Fulmer says Chicago mayor. Chicago. Guy in the comments says Chicago. Iron Horseman says Chicago. Well, she just passed up Uncle Touchy. So far, we got 2 for Uncle Touchy, 3 for Chicago mayor. M. Gabriel, 1 for Joe Biden. 7 Wonder, Chicago mayor. Patriot in the Dark says half-wit governor of Michigan. We're not doing write-ins today. Come on, man.
Wow. I thought that was, the right of the Oh, wrong right. Never mind.
It's right. So far, we got 4 for Chicago mayor, 3 for Joe Biden. I'm casting my vote for Joe Biden, so now we're tied up 4-4. Chicago mayor, Joe Biden. So somebody come in here and break this tie. Or vote for someone else. Hell, I don't care. Still got none for the West Palm Beach mayor or Nick Hanauer. We can't have a tie, people.
Or could you award it to 2 contestants? It
Gretchen
is your
has
show.
an
You can do
honorary
whatever you
win every
want.
week. Come on, folks. Don't make me turn this chat around. We got 24 people out there, and so far, you know what? Out of 8 votes, only 5 of them are from the chat. So let's get something, folks. Gizzard Gary says Joe Biden. Patriot says Chicago. Rich White says Chicago mayor for her catfish eyes. Right now we got 6 for Chicago, 5 for Uncle Touchy.
That's an insult to catfish.
I know, right? Although they do kind of look like catfish eyes, so that I have to applaud that one. All right, folks, going once, going twice, going 3 times. Chicago mayor, you're the moron of the week.
And there we had another tale of stupidity in this week's episode of Moron of the Week.
We got a follow-up, folks, to the balls of steel from last week. Because we know a little bit more about one of the winners. For those of you that don't remember, one was Master Sergeant Royce from in the Fort Leavenworth, who stopped a mass shooting by plowing the fool over with his car on a bridge in Fort Leavenworth. The other was the unnamed security guard that snatched the rifle from the rioter. This is a piece from coffeeordie.com by Joshua Skovlin from June 2nd, 2020. How a Marine Corps veteran disarmed a rioter during Seattle protest. A Marine Corps veteran turned security contractor who asked that his name not be used for security reasons unintentionally took the internet by storm after a video surfaced of him disarming a Seattle rioter who had stolen a police officer's AR-15 from a destroyed squad car Saturday. The preliminary details of what happened have become distorted on social media, with misconceptions about a second rifle that was slung on his back, as well as why he was at the protests that developed following George Floyd's death in police custody. Coffee or Die obtained an exclusive interview with the contractor to set the record straight on what happened that day. The contractor served 4 years in the U.S. Marine Corps Infantry in 1st Battalion, 3rd Marines Alpha Company. After separating from service, he entered into his current career of military contracting, which has included working as a firearms instructor and in security, along with starting a community group on Instagram called Firewatch Official, a page dedicated to helping military and first responder personnel share their stories and quell demons that some carry with them. He said that he is in between jobs and due to financial strains incurred by the pandemic is also in the beginning stages of starting his own company. When you get to the bottom, it's like, where are you going to go but up, he said. Being introduced to firearms at a young age helped him view guns as tools and develop safe handling practices. He said his father taught him the intricacies of firearms It's a passion, it's a hobby, it's obsession, it's a love. It's the thing I choose to make my life around, he explained. He was naturally drawn to working with firearms and in a career that allows him to use them. And he was in the right place at the right time during the protests and riots on the streets of Seattle. The contractor was hired to protect the crew of reporters from a local Fox News affiliate out of Seattle while they covered the protests and riots in the city, although he's been accused of being at the protest to assert himself. I was working and doing my job, trying to pay bills, he said. I'd rather be home playing with my dog. And he laughs. My wife's dog. She'd kill me if she heard that one. He thought through every step of his contract and then some, starting with the decision to carry his pistol in a bag because he wanted to blend in. The contractor also expressed concern over the hundreds of people potentially bumping into him and trying to lift a side-holstered pistol or his spare magazines on his belt. He dressed in multiple layers in case he was made by the rioters and would need to switch up to obscure his identity. The contractor met with the news crew around 3 p.m. to move them down to the area where they would be reporting. He said there was complete chaos when they arrived, and it continued throughout the day. He was immediately busy. I was trying to keep them safe from anything, whether it was thrown, tossed, or someone just rushing by, he said. The contractor was especially cognizant of the Fox News photojournalist who had a camera on his shoulder, leaving him completely blind to the right side. I became his eyes, he said. The news crew wanted to set up in a particular area to record what was happening to 2 police vehicles that were on the street. Rioters were destroying the squad cars rapidly, and the contractor had already made a mental note to watch them because he suspected that there were firearms inside. He saw the vandals digging in the first squad car and immediately moved the news crew around the corner to safety. Stay safe, and I'll be right back, he told them. The first, he was a shooter. People are getting me on this. He was a shooter. He produced the AR-15, held it like good old Rambo style at the hip, and he fired 4 rounds into the police vehicle and the wall of the building, he said. The contractor explained that he wasn't sure why the rioter stopped at 4 rounds, but he knew he needed to act quickly. The rioter didn't see him coming, but ducked into a store next to the squad car. The contractor could still see a part of the vandal's frame around the corner of the doorway, and as soon as he turned the corner, he yelled aggressively for him to put down the weapon. The contractor described the rioters' reaction to the confrontation as a deer in the headlights, stunned, wide eyes and his hands kind of opened up. And he's still holding a rifle. He didn't drop it. So I snatched his weapon. After confiscating the rifle, he backed out of the store slowly, then took off back to his news crew, simultaneously removing the bolt carrier group and the charging handle of the AR-15 and stuffing them in his pocket. He regrouped to continue his job. Shortly after the first incident, the contractor eyed a second rioter doing the same thing to the other squad car. Rinse and repeat. He said the second one caught on video was almost identical to the first disarming of a rioter. Even though he had successfully prevented 2 separate potential threats, he had a much larger threat looming. I'd just taken a firearm from a guy that was essentially aligned with hundreds, if not thousands, of people in this area, he said, and I drew a line around me that said, I'm not with any of you here. In addition to keeping the news crew safe, his concern now grew to the rioters turning on him after he thwarted their plans. The contractor quickly called the police dispatcher and reported the 2 confiscated AR-15s. A large group of protesters started running around the corner past the contractor and the news crew. He walked around the corner expecting to see the police approaching, but there were no officers in sight. The contractor knew he needed to get the rifles off him due to the growing threat. Until I got to about 3.5 blocks away where I was getting closer to the police, I had people on me. I had a horde of people on me saying all kinds of things imaginable, phones out, all that, he said. So there was definitely an uptick. It went from maybe 15 to 50% of attention because people were just looking at me like, why do you have this rifle? Everyone's after me. The contractor headed out with one of the news crew members to get the rifles back to the police, and 2 males were following him. He turned to confront them and found out that they were following him to make sure he got there safely. He recalled that one of them wore an American flag bandana and had another in his pocket, partially showing. That tells me you're here to protest and you're trying to hold up American values, which I thought was excellent, he said. The American flag protester assisted the contractor the whole way, while the second peeled off prior to the police line. The protester jogged ahead to gather intel on whether the police were actually there and confirm their position. As the trio approached the police line, the contractor said, "They're on high alert just as well as I was, I made it very clear what my intentions were. I listened to what they were saying, and I approached, showing them exactly what I was doing. He popped the AR-15s, slung them over his forearm, and holstered his pistol to make it clear that he was not threatening the police. The contractor and his crew were met with some resistance from the police and were ordered to stop approaching. He explained to the officer talking to him that the rifles were theirs and they needed to take them. I took the bolt carrier groups and charging handles out of my back pocket. I put them in his hand, and as his lieutenant walks up, his eyes were just kind of like, "What the hell?" he said. He explained the situation and that the rifles actually belonged to the police, handed them over, and ran back to find the crew member who had stayed by their original location. Rioters and protesters recognized him from the previous events, so he switched out his outer layer of clothing and wore a mask for the rest of the night. But he kept his news crew safe while simultaneously preventing the potential deaths of police officers, protesters, and rioters. Yeah, I think that guy absolutely deserved to be co-winner of Balls of Steel last week. No doubt in my mind whatsoever. What do you guys think?
He deserves Jimmy John's.
Jimmy John's.
I would nominate him to receive a medal from anyone from the commandant all the way up to the president, even though he's no longer on active duty.
Yeah, that was absolutely heroic what he did. He could have chosen to say, "Not my problem. It's not what I'm here for. I'm here to protect the news crew. It doesn't matter to me what those guys are doing as long as they're not trying to do anything to the news crew." He could have done that. A lot of people would have done that. Not him. He ran to the trouble to do something about it.
Oh, you mean like in that Marine Corps recruiting commercial? Yeah, we have a tendency to do that.
You know, not everybody can. And those that can, you know, hats off to you. You know, he absolutely deserved to have them balls of steel. As a matter of fact, should send him a gift certificate for a wheelbarrow to carry those big ass things. Cause freaking huge. All right, and speaking of freaking huge cojones, that is going to lead us to our last segment, Self-Defense Shoutouts. For those of you who are new to the show or who have never stuck around to the end, Self-Defense Shoutouts are not where I'm reveling in the proposition that the bad guy won the room temperature challenge by taking a dirt nap. It is where I'm reveling in the proposition that the good guy had the means, method, and opportunity to prevent the bad guy from making him do the same. I believe this is your favorite segment, is it not, Roll Call?
Yeah!
That kills me every time. First up, from WTAE.com, Pittsburgh's Action News 4. Police, Brentwood homeowner shoots, kills alleged intruder. Brentwood, Pennsylvania. An alleged intruder at a house in Brentwood was shot and killed by the homeowner during Wednesday night, Allegheny County Police said. The shooting on West Bellcrest Avenue was reported at about 10 p.m. The person who was shot has not been identified. County homicide detectives are investigating the shooting. Anyone with information asked to call 833-ALL-TIPS. Anonymous calls will be accepted. So good for you, homeowner. Glad that and by the way, this is from June 3rd, 2020. Glad that the bad guy did not do unto you. And last, but certainly not least, Atlanta Journal-Constitution, AJC.com, deadly shooting at DeKalb Walmart ruled self-defense by police. By Asia Simone Burns from June 1st, 2020. A man was killed Monday afternoon after gunfire erupted inside a DeKalb County Walmart, officials said. However, police said the shooter will not be charged. God dang it. Police said the shooter will not be charged will not be charged since investigators have ruled it was an act of self-defense, DeKalb County Police spokeswoman Michaela Vincent said. The shooting victim, a man in his late to mid-60s, died on the way to a hospital, according to Vincent. His name was not released. Police detained a man in his late 50s in connection with the incident, which happened at the store on Gresham Road. Officers were sent to the shopping center about 2 p.m. after someone reported gunshots, Vincent said. Investigators said the incident began as a dispute between the two men, later saying that the shooting was in self-defense. It's not clear what led to the dispute. The shooter has been released from custody. So there you go. 2 instances where, despite what the left and the antis like Nancy Pelosi would have you believe, good guys with guns do stop bad guys all the time. That being said, it is time to lock the doors, roll up the awnings, and sweep up the floors. I want to say thank you to my esteemed panel for coming and being a part of this tonight. Roll call, where can people find your stuff? What plugs do you have? What last words of wisdom do you want to leave us with? Anything that you want to say?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me, Budget. I really do enjoy this show. It's one of my favorite things to do. Sorry I wasn't here the last few weeks, but
Okay.
I had some other things that I had to attend to. As far as my content goes, you can find me on Instagram at rollcall219. You can also find me on YouTube at rollcall219. You can also find me on Twitter, where that one's a little tricky. It's rollcall2010, but there is a 219 in there. You can find it. Where I tweet some of the crappy politicians and some of the other people that we fundamentally don't agree with. On the channel coming up there, I have some product reviews from VersaCarry. So stay tuned from that. And also, we'll get a first glimpse video of shooting my new St. Victor 7.5 pistol. And we'll check that out and see how loud it is and if I like it. Other than that, thanks for having me, Budget. It's been a great time tonight. And all you people out there in the chat, thanks for hanging with us.
Always welcome, Ro. Speaking of always welcome, we have the irascible yet lovable Squibload. Is there anything you would like to leave us with, sir?
Everybody have a good weekend.
And on that note, I'd like to express my thanks to all of you out there in the chat. As always, I am humbled and amazed that you've chosen to spend this time. It's what? We started at 11:30 and it's 1:30. So these last 2 hours, holy cow. Some of you have been here since the start of this for the entire 2 hours. I can't believe that. I say it every week because it's true. I am humbled and amazed that you've chosen to spend this time with me. Remember, folks, we are in dark times, and we need to let our Congress critters and elected representatives know what we think. Send us snail mail, email, telephone, telegraph, semaphore, heliograph, carrier pigeon, smoke signals, bicycle messengers, runners, tom-tom messages, whatever you have to do, let them know what you think. And never, ever, ever give up the fight. I'll see you guys on the next one.